If I just tap you, if you can carry on, because quite often we may not understand just for 1 second something else. So if I just tap you, you can carry on.
Very much indeed. I do feel very pleased about this opportunity this morning on the very eve of the conference, meeting with the representatives of the press and media, and seeing in this group so many familiar faces. I hope that I'll have a chance to see and talk to many of you, if not all of you individually, before this event is over. I know that you will understand the international attempts that we must make to deal with the environment problem. I attach a very high degree of importance to the decisions that governments must take as to how to carry on the process after Stockholm itself. It would be in my view, it would be quite counterproductive if governments were to decide to do many things here and not provide at the same time the means of doing them. In my view, this would disappoint the hopes and the expectations of the world community, of their own constituents, and certainly, in my view, would constitute a major evidence of the lack of success of this conference. I take this as a very important evidence of whether this conference will succeed. Here, as you know, that this, too, is the actions that they take on this is one of my cardinal indices of the success or failure of this exercise. But perhaps most of all, we have to judge our success or failure here on what kind of a world will be produced as a result of what we do or fail to do here in the next decade or two. And this depends most of all on the publics, on the people for whom it is your responsibility and your opportunity to inform them concerning the basic nature of these issues. There is no question that the environment issue has arisen because of deep interest at the grassroots of the public. The public attitude towards the environment issue and the public attitude towards what happens here at Stockholm is going to be absolutely crucial in the decisions taken by the governments here, and in particular at the follow-up of these decisions. Let me say here very, very frankly that if we accomplish the things that I have just suggested, agreement on the declaration, agreement on the action plan, agreement on the organization and financial arrangements, we will have a major launching pad which I believe will give mankind a real opportunity to avoid the worst predictions of the doomsdayers that we hear so much about at this point. Now, however, if we apply to the conference a quite unreasonable yardstick that we must solve in 10 days all of the problems, all of the great issues of peace and war, of nuclear disarmament, of poverty, of disarmament in these 10 days, obviously we are predestining the conference to failure. We cannot solve this in these 10 days, but if we do our work well in this period, in my view, we will create a new and hopeful climate of public and world opinion which will permit us to address these other problems with new insights, new political energies, and hopefully a new sense of our basic interdependence with each other on this planet. Indicated to us, or communicated with us officially, that they are not coming. I'll read the list. This is the list of countries that have officially notified us that they will not be coming. Burma, Khmer Republic, Laos, Khmer Republic, yes. Cambodia, for Laos, 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 if you're fully anglicized, Mali, People's Democratic Republic of Yemen, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, Western Samoa. I'm not sure I heard the whole question, but I believe I caught the gist of it. If I repeat it, you can tell me if I believe you were asking me whether I believe anything significant can result from this conference if the Eastern countries are not at it. Is that correct? Well, of course, as I have said, the distinguished Secretary General of the United Nations has made clear from time to time that we are deeply concerned about the absence from this conference of the Soviet Union and the other countries of Eastern Europe who have indicated on several occasions their intention not to come to the conference should the problem of the participation in the conference by the German Democratic Republic not be resolved. Now, however, I should remind you that this is the first conference on the human environment. It is, as we already know, one of the largest conferences that has ever been convened. We do have a very substantial representation from the nations and the peoples of the world. The majority are represented here, and
what is your evaluation of the significance of the bilateral agreement between the Soviet Union and the United States on cooperation on environmental problems in view of the fact that Russia appears not to participate in this conference?
I have been asked what I think of the significance of the bilateral agreement between the United States and the Soviet Union. I, of course, know about this and welcome all such arrangements. I would remind you that there is a very great need for bilateral arrangements amongst nations, and they in no way conflict with the absolute necessity for a cooperative approach at the global level. In my own country, for example, I'm also familiar with recent bilateral arrangements that have been made in respect of the Great Lakes between the United States and Canada, and I'm sure any one of you could quote many other arrangements. And certainly an arrangement of this kind between two such major powers as the United States and the Soviet Union testifies to the deep interest of both countries in the environment issue and their recognition that cooperation in this area is absolutely indispensable.
Of India, who just some time before mentioned some of the countries have asked you that your action plan has gone too far. Which are the countries?
I'm afraid I'll have to leave it to the representatives of each of the countries to explain. I'm sorry, I was asked what countries have said that our action plan goes too far. I think that we will soon see this. As the conference unfolds, I believe it would be inappropriate for me to try to explain the position of individual countries, which has been brought to my attention in my capacity as Secretary General. It's much more appropriate for the countries themselves to indicate their position, and this position, of course, doesn't apply to the whole action plan. It applies to particular issues about which countries have especially strong feelings. Well, I think what we have to recognize here is this. We have the presence here at the conference, we already know, of 112 nations, representing the majority of the nations of the world and of the peoples of the world. This really around an issue which a year or so ago was not considered to be of great interest to many of them. Now, the people who have come here have come because they have been concerned with this issue. Now, the people who have stayed away, or may stay away, are not staying away because of their lack of concern with the issue. They're staying away because of other considerations beyond the environment. All of these countries, those associated, those who have stayed or may stay away because of their feelings about the participation of the German Democratic Republic, have all indicated their deep interest in the environment, their deep desire for international cooperation, and have been very constructively associated with the preparatory process up until this point. This is the basis of my hope. I think you all recognize that most of the specific activities that are involved in dealing with the environment take place in particular sectors. And in those sectors, the specialized agencies of the United Nations have been operating for years. FAO in the field of agriculture and water and soil, UNESCO in its scientific programs, in its Man in the Biosphere program, World Health Organization, WMO, you know, almost every agency has programs that bear directly on the environment, and these programs will certainly continue. But in terms of what we now need, and what nations now need, and that is a new way of managing these activities, of approaching them as part of a total system of activities, because this is really what the environment issue is all about. Then, if we do not succeed in installing that kind of policy mechanism in the United Nations, then I feel the compelling need for this will mean that it will be installed elsewhere. And I do not think that is, I don't think that's viable. I don't think, certainly I don't think this would be a desirable thing for the world. I don't think there's a practical substitute for the United Nations in this area. Therefore, in my view, the success of this conference is not only very, very germane to the success of our efforts to deal with the environment issue, but very germane to the future of the United Nations itself. Although in total 116 governments participated in the preparatory work, and were given opportunities to participate in particular pieces of that work, not all those countries participated in every issue. Obviously, they could have, but they chose not to. In other words, some countries took special interest in the proposals on soils, and their representatives participated in the formulation of those. But there are many other countries represented here who, while they haven't mentioned anything, perhaps about it yet, certainly may wish to bring new views to bear here. So this is why I say that I cannot properly say that all the governments here like all the proposals. In fact, we know already that many of them do not like particular proposals. I would stress again this question of process. We have used this conference to develop an action process. And that action process has moved forward as far as we could possibly move it before the conference, and then we incorporated the results of that process in our documents. And that process has continued with further negotiations even since our documents were put to bed. And now, the governments, we've delivered it into the hands of governments, and they can take the decisions which will determine whether that process continues beyond Stockholm.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know you...
Question.